This is just a little emergency lighting recommendations video. You'll see lots of things on YouTube where people bash solar electric lighting, and they'll say go with either candles, which as you can see is very dim, probably less than one actual candle power, or things like oil lights like this, which is probably on par with about a somewhat underdriven 15-watt GLS lamp. You can see it's fairly dim. When with mains lighting or inverter lighting like this 11-watt fluorescent lamp, or 12-volt lights like, if I can get it to work, come on, turn on, there, a little Chinese-made Philips lamp. These only really work good if you cut down the lamp holder, because they're designed for use in Malibu type lights, which have a very squat lamp holder, and the internal contacts are flush with the top of it, whereas these are designed more for actual wedge-based lamps. So it's kind of intermittent, but it's a fix you can easily do with just put one of the lamp holders in a pair of a vise, and just with either like dikes or a chisel, just chisel off enough of the plastic so that you've got the top of it flush with the contacts, and they'll work reliably. But these run fairly hot, so I'd recommend only using them outside on very cold ambience. Then you've got one candle power Type 161 lamp there, Type 901, although that's General Electric's name for it. Malibu and us from Sylvania will refer to them as Type 516, but they're the exact same lamp. I don't know what things like Philips call them, but it's probably one of the two. These are 2.9 candle power. You can see fairly bright if you were to take one of these lamp holders, because you can get a lamp holder assembled like this from All Electronics for $5 and change. And you take one of these and you mount it to a block of wood or something. You've got speakers, and you just put some speaker wire or zip cord or something running back to your battery bank with a fuse, of course, or like put a cigarette lighter plug on the end of it. And that's a fairly effective room light. You could just have one of those in like a big room, and it would provide enough light so that people wouldn't trip, fall, and break their necks, hence my term for them being anti-trip neck brake lights. Then you've got, for more getting into practical seeing type applications, you've got a bulb light, although it's made in Japan by Hybec for Bulb Light Industries, but that's an 18-watt one of their X2000 lamps. It's a functional replacement for Type 921. It's about as bright, but it lasts anywhere from 10 times as long to 20 times as long, because it's either a $5,000 lamp or a $10,000 lamp. And you've got a Type 923 11-watt yard lighting thing, also intended for things like Malibu light fixtures. And those are both effective for task lighting, and if you were to go into fixtures for things like a 1156 lamp or an 1141 lamp, those, because they're getting into things like 21 candle powers and 32 candle power, they're fairly bright and you can easily see with them. Same with things like 12-volt fluorescent lamps like this. This is an 11-watt Glenergy. Again, fairly substantially brighter than the oil light, even when it hasn't come up to full brightness, and it will get substantially brighter. It will get about on par with that lamp there. So yeah, 12-volt lighting, and depending on your needs, 120-volt lighting through an inverter is a lot safer, although for certain applications you don't want compact fluorescent lamps, because all the rules about safely using compact fluorescent lamps, like no dimmers, nothing other than dry contact switching, no enclosed fixtures, base or burning position limitations for higher power lamps, although in the case of a little 11-watt lamp like this, it's pretty much good for universal burning. Those all apply. So for other applications, you may want to use, like if it's very cold, because compact fluorescent lamps don't like it cold, is use LED lamps like this 8-watt Philips ambient LED lamp. You can see it's one of the ones with a separate phosphor. You can see that's the yellow stuff, that's the YAG phosphor in a separate bit of plastic. And for other applications, like also if it's cold, like for frequent switching, where you don't want to use a lamp that costs $22 like that one, regular 60-watt, or regular just general lighting service incandescent lamps, or regular halogen lamps like this Hungarian-made General Electric 57-watt, or things like this A17 Osram Sylvania high efficiency halogen, 43 watts, but it's functionally a replacement for a 60 watt yellow slope like that one. The same rules, but the same rules for lighting and safely using compact fluorescent supply, and for certain applications you'd want to use one of these. Like these I've got so that for any kind of extended blackouts in winter I can have one of these as the lay lights in the chicken coop to stimulate winter laying. And then for other things, like if you don't want to run an inverter, you have things like 12 volt fluorescent lamps like this Greenergy 15 watt example, about $10 from the company up in Canada. You can find these elsewhere, like this one I got in a lot of a couple of them on eBay, and that was about $6 for the lamp, not the watt. The watt was more than that. Or things like sheet electric marine lamps. Like this is a plug in the camera. This is a 12 volt, 13 watt marine lamp. This you can get on Amazon now. They're over $19 each. When I got this one, it was about $13 per lamp. But that was when the quality of these was higher than the Camco ones they were offering. These are a lot more expensive now than the Camco ones, and the quality's gone down. So you may want to get the Camco one. But then again, that's something you should that you should experiment with, depending on your needs. And for things like 12 volt trouble lighting, or just if like you've only got a couple of car batteries or a deep cycle battery or something, and you haven't had the time to get a decent stock of emergency lighting equipment, you've got things like 12 volt trouble lights like this. This one I got at a one of those traveling tool sale things, kind of like a mobile Harbor Freight thing, for about I think it was either $4 or $5 or something. And it's just got a little 25 watt 12 volt GLS lamp in it, but it came with a 50 watt lamp. But you may want to get lower power lamps, like you can get these, and you can get 15 watt lamps as well from bulbs.com. So you may want to do that. One careful thing though that you have to remember about any kind of 12 volt lamp, whether you're using medium screw base lamps like this one or that one or that one or that one, and if you're in England or one of those countries that uses them, dual contact bayonet base lamps. This is just my 300 watt light tower that I use to film stuff at night. This so you can easily see stuff. If you're one of the countries that uses dual contact bayonet base lamps, one proviso you have to remember with these: never ever ever connect them up to anything other than 12 volts, or if you get the much rarer, more expensive 24 volt lamps, if you've got a 24 volt system. Although for any kind of basic stuff like this, 12 volts is a lot easier, for reasons to be explained later. These will explode, and in the case of this, you're looking at anywhere from between anything from $6 to $20 or more, because 12 volt fluorescent lamps are very expensive. And in the case of one of these, if you were to go to Home Depot and get the 25 watt or 50 watt Philips equivalent, you're looking at either $3.49 for the 25 watt or $3.99 for the 50 watt. You're going to destroy something very expensive. Now, in any kind of emergency situation, you may not be able to get one because there's 5 feet of snow between you, and there's 5 foot deep snowdrifts between you and wherever it is that you can get replacements. In any kind of societal collapse, they'll be pretty much irreplaceable. You'll be stuck with what you have on hand. And the same warning applies to these, although these are generally substantially cheaper. Like you can get the more common 12 volt indicator lamps, or automotive type lamps, on bulbs.com for generally about 88 cents each. Not much more expensive for if you were to get them from things like home centers. Like the good source is the outdoor Malibu, where they've got the Malibu type lights. That's the good source. Or things like your grocery store, like Wally World, in the lamps aisle, they've generally got a section for the more obscure specialty lamps, like outdoor lighting type lamps. They've got them there. Or the automotive section, they've got car type lamps. But these are generally substantially cheaper and a lot safer. Although these, this is too hot to touch now. But things like these are a lot safer than these or those, and substantially brighter and substantially more controllable. This is just a random assortment of ones in case I want to demonstrate. But Anyway, and as far as the 12 volts versus 24 volts or 48 volts, you'll see lots of stuff about how a 24 volt system or 48 volt system is a lot more efficient than 12 volts. You do get an efficiency gain for really big inverters, but it's not by much, because even some of the bigger multi-kilowatt 12 volt inverters have efficiencies of 90% or more, which is very good. And 12 volts, again, you can readily get 12 volt lamps in stores and online. And it's a lot harder to find 24 volt lamps. They're a lot more expensive. Maybe in the case of the car type lamps, they're of similar pricing because many trucks are 24 volts, but they're still somewhat hard to find and somewhat unusual. And again, you've got the problem with, there's lots of things like many automotive type accessories are also good for 12 volts, which is also one of the advantages of having cigarette lighter type receptacles, because these you can reuse, and lots of stuff already has them. With Anderson power poles, if you assemble it badly, or you do any kind of screw up in manufacturing it, they're non-reusable. You have to just cut the stuff off and chuck it, and that's about over a buck's worth of parts down the drain. But one of the reasons why that 12 volt being less efficient came in is because since power is the product of electrical potential and current, you need much higher. You have much higher system currents on a given power of 12 volt stuff versus 24 volt stuff. Like one of those is about a little under 2.1 amperes, whereas the 12 volt, whereas the 24 volt equivalent would be about 1 and change, or about 1.0 something amperes. But that's, again, only the differences in the current. Efficiency is still the same. And again, for 12 volt inverters, they're cheaper because, again, there's a much bigger demand for 12 volt stuff than for 24 volts. And they're easier to find, and again, the only real thing is that you need much higher currents, but then again, or stuff grows a much higher current. But then again, with any kind of major inverter system, you don't want something where you've got one big inverter, because that's a single point of failure in their system. That's why you want lots of things like 12 volt inverters. Like I've got about a dozen, not of these, but I've got about a dozen different 12 volt inverters just out of sheer redundancy, and because they're so useful for stuff. And again, it's much easier to have many little inverters like this, which is 50 bucks, or this was about 46 bucks at Wally World, or things like one of the big Harbor Freight ones, which is anywhere from like the 1,000 watt. You can get it if it's on sale for 80 bucks and you've got a 20% off coupon. You could get it for 64 bucks, or things like even my big Sunforce one, which is about 213 bucks on Amazon. It's much easier to have multiples of them and much less expensive than to have one really big multi-$1,000 like Outback Power Systems or Magnum Energy inverter, because again, you've got a great deal of redundancy, again, 2 is 1 and 1 is not.